Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak about the growing threat of the use of a nuclear weapon in armed conflict and the threat of a new nuclear arms race. Such threats should scare every single member of this House. I know it worries my constituents. The world has not been in such an unstable nuclear situation since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Since that time, the risk of nuclear war has not been high, but it has never been zero. A web of nuclear arms control agreements was created over decades that reduced the number of nuclear warheads and set limits on nuclear testing. Over 50 years of such agreements, the number of nuclear warheads was reduced by 86%. However, Mr. Speaker, after decades of progress in nuclear arms control and disarmament, in a very short period, we have seen much of the architecture of these agreements undermined. While not quite dismantled, they are significantly weakened as both the Russian Federation and the United States have withdrawn from some, and Russia has unilaterally withdrawn from others. We have seen the nuclear weapons agreement with Iran, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, erode following the U.S. withdrawal by President Donald Trump in 2018. And as a result, every day the Iranian government increases its capacity to build a nuclear weapon. Throughout Russia's unprovoked and unlawful invasion of Ukraine, we have frequently heard Russia threaten to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. In late November, President Putin's mouthpiece, Vladimir Solovyov, who hosts a show on Russian state TV, warned that nuclear war is, quote, unavoidable, end quote. Each of these actions, let alone taken together, expose the unbearable truth about nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons do not prevent wars. To the contrary, they are used to threaten, coerce, and facilitate war. Mr. Speaker, we need an urgent call to action. There is leadership in this House seeking to renew and reinvigorate the urgent need for nuclear arms control. Congressman Don Beyer and John Garamendi lead a working group on nuclear weapons and arms control. Congressman Ted Lieu has introduced H.R. 669 to restrict the first use of nuclear weapons, and H.R. 2894 that would block a nuclear launch by artificial intelligence. Along with Congressman Blumenauer, I introduced H.Res. 77 that calls on the United States government to work towards the goals and aspirations of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW. Along with Senator Markey, I have also introduced H.R. 3154, the HALT Act, to freeze nuclear weapons production and urgently return to negotiations. And Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton has introduced H.R. 2775 to direct the U.S. to sign the TPNW and convert the funds that maintain and sustain our nuclear arsenal to address urgent domestic needs. At the end of November, I was privileged to attend a meeting of parliamentarians at the United Nations to discuss these urgent questions. The meeting was coordinated by Nobel Peace Prize recipient, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Each of us was from a nation that has not yet joined the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We discussed what needs to happen in our countries and in our parliaments to accelerate the debate on ending the threat of nuclear weapons. We were at the UN because the 93 nations that have joined the TPNW were meeting to discuss concrete steps to implement the treaty's provisions. Such leadership should be recognized and supported, Mr. Speaker, but it's not enough. It's simply not enough. I wish the United States would be bold. I wish the U.S. would join the TPNW and abolish nuclear weapons once and for all. But at a minimum, we need a path back to dialogue and arms control negotiations. And if we're going to move the major nuclear powers to action, including the United States, we need a massive outpouring of grassroots action in support of ending the threat of nuclear weapons. Without large-scale citizen movements, I fear that the nuclear powers will continue to move in the wrong direction, and we will see the unraveling of all nuclear agreements, a renewed nuclear arms race, and even the actual use of nuclear weapons in current and future conflicts. We cannot wait to change direction, Mr. Speaker. We live at a time when the world as we know it can be destroyed in one terrible nuclear flash. The time to act is now. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Joyce, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the House and